first of all, tell me about your background and kind of, how you got into doing what you're doing. And then tell us about your new lab.
Sure, yeah. So I've been working forensic DNA for about 17, 18 years now. Got into it I kind of on a fluke. I was all about being an optometrist and did a 6-week stint at an optometry clinic in a hospital. And what looks better, A or B, C or D? I quit that and said, no way. Which got me into forensics. I've been working that for quite a while now. I worked in the public sector, a couple of public labs, New Mexico and Minnesota. I've worked the for-profit private industry, Sorensen Forensics. I was the DNA technical lead for a long time, and then lab director for the bulk of my career there, and saw both sides of it, and saw some real deficiencies, if you will, from both aspects. Public sector just really want to do the right thing, but are just don't have a lot of resources to do it, and kind of get a little bit of difficulty in bringing on some of the coolest, latest technologies. Private sector, you always have that dollar bill over your head just all the time. You gotta, it is for profit, and you just can't make it difficult to do so.
Yeah, it's an interesting model that you have going for sure, and I'm excited to see. Yeah,
as far as I know, it's the first in the country and maybe the world. We're a unique and beautiful snowflake.
Yeah. Well, seeing how winter's coming in Utah, that might be fitting.
There you go.
Yeah. So at Intermountain Forensics, one of the things that I really am impressed with this new lab that you have going is the new technology that you're bringing into it. Talk a little bit about some of especially the DNA sequencers and things like that.
Sure. Well, our lab has a kind of a 3-pillar mission in that we want to, number one, bring a new level of transparency to the system where you can see what we're doing, how we're doing it. Number two, bring new resources, money into forensic DNA, specifically charitable donations and government grants that are typically associated with a forensic lab. And number three, apply technology. Our mission statement is to try and work cases that are cold cases, sexual assault kits, and unidentified bodies. And when you roll into the cold case side, we like to think of ourselves as the island of misfit cases. It's all those cases that have been languishing and are just continually coming up back to the crime lab that just can't get done. And the goal here is to apply new science to get these accomplished. In these cold cases, you got basically 4 options. You either don't have enough DNA or don't have any DNA to get anything usable. And in those cases, well, there's just really nothing you can do. But in each of the other instances, and that is, there's not enough DNA. You can't get enough DNA out of the particular evidentiary samples to go forward. Or you do get DNA and it's inconclusive. And it's just not possible to interpret the profiles that are coming off of that. And the fourth option is you got a great profile, it's sitting in the CODIS database, and it's just not doing anything. Those three options there's technology that we can throw at that. So let's start back, the final one, go backwards. Okay, so I've got a great CODIS profile. It's just waiting to have a solve of a cold case. It's not hitting. The only thing you can do there is wait until some guy, the perpetrator of this, ends up back in that database as an offender. That could never, ever happen, in which case we're just stuck. But
yeah, it's interesting. Sorry to interrupt here, but
go ahead.
I find it really interesting with a lot of the cases that I see, just not only in the U.S. but around the world, is the investigators may find a DNA profile off of the evidence or somewhere at the crime scene, but then they don't have anybody to match it to. That was the biggest problem with like the Golden State Killer.
Yep,
They
exactly.
had DNA from a lot of his victims, but including like a glove in the taxi and all sorts of crazy things. But they never had
Let me
him
tell
in the
you,
database.
that is the most frustrating thing, because
Right.
you've got a great profile. You're just ready to compare it to a suspect, a perpetrator, and when you do, you're going to get tremendous stats, and it's just waiting to be solved. And it's just, you can't do anything. You just got to find this individual. To your point, the Golden State Killer, that's exactly where I'm going here. Genealogy. It is a game changer in that aspect. It allows us to expand the pool of people and then even target a specific family tree, if you will, identify a family group or an individual in question, and point investigators in that direction. And I think you see it in the media right now. If you do a lookup of forensic genealogy, the solves are amazing. There's tons of these cases that are just sitting there waiting to hit and just won't. The genealogy side, and that's one of the things that we're bringing online. We're working with Verigen, the company that makes some of these technologies and owns the GEDmatch database. They're going to put out a forensic specific genetic genealogy panel by end of year, and I think it's going to be fantastic. And we're going to bring it online, and we're going to get some real good cases closed, because we'll be able to point in that direction.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So talk about those other examples.
Inconclusive. You've just got these samples that have a ton of people on them, and you just can't tease out. Next generation sequencing, the same technology that I mentioned, the platform for genetic genealogy, is something that's going to start fixing some of that problem as well. The older technology, traditional DNA, you are looking at repetitive DNA sequences, and they're short tandem repeats. It's just sequences of DNA, words, if you will, that are repeating over and over again. And we're just able to count the words. Doesn't matter we can't see what the letters are inside those words. We just count the words. Next generation sequencing will allow us to actually look at the actual letters in those repeat units. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, it'll allow us to tease apart things that were overlapped before. So if we get, for example, a sample that has a 8 repeat unit in it, and there might be 2 or 3 or 4 people that are contributing that 8. With sequencing, we can actually look and say, all right, now I can see the letters inside here. And in this case, it's ATCG that's giving us that repeat. And in this case, it's ATTC giving us that repeat. And so we're able to actually say this, where before it was an 8 allele, an 8 repeat. Now we say, well, this 8 repeat belongs to this person over here, and this 8 repeat belongs to this person over here. It's going to give some real power to make inconclusive profiles into something that you can conclusively determine who's there. It's going to be huge. And not only that, but these things are, next generation sequencing is also called massively parallel sequencing. It does things in parallel. And this allows us to do more than one thing at the same time. Short tandem repeats, like CODIS level, as well as YSTRs, are run at the exact same time to generate data concurrently in parallel. It's a real big technology. We think it's going to change the world. It's difficult, but it's one of those things that we're gonna hang our hat at, and we're gonna have it up and running. We're in the throes of the validation right now. Should be done with it within this month in October here.
Well, it's interesting the scientific speak that you're talking about. For most people that are, especially just people that are interested in crime in general and the crime shows, and they're not the scientific level. A lot of that's not going to make sense. But if you're just talking to a layman, what would you say? I mean, as far as your excitement level of when this comes online?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. It's the biggest problem that we're having right now is we're just not able to make conclusive statements about samples where you've got mixtures. And you can think of it, I mean, just take a bowl of blood and put a bunch of people's blood in there, and you're just not able to say goes here, this goes here, that kind of thing. This allows us to look into that pool a little bit more and decipher all of the different fragments of that.
So maybe an example would be, you know, if you had a homicide scene and 3 or 4 subjects that you're looking at, then you do have some DNA sample, like some blood spatters, some things like, or, you know, saliva, whatever, but it's from multiple people. So you might be able to actually look at that and say, oh, this is Jim, and this is Karen, and this is Steve, and be able to actually decipher that and be able to narrow down onto a certain subject, as opposed to just saying, well, there's lots of DNA there, but we can't, there's nothing we can do about it. So we can't arrest anybody.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
Beyond even mixtures, it's low levels things. Samples that don't have a lot of DNA, it's sometimes difficult to know what's there and not there. The more we can decipher all of the different pieces and parts inside that sample, the more we can say, all right, I'm absolutely positive that we have all the DNA here, so it can be a little bit more conclusive as to how we're going to interpret it. It's a really, really big deal. It's a technology that's been in every other field, academia, clinical pathology, hospital labs, all of these things for decades. We're just kind of a little bit slow to the party. And but now that we're bringing it online, it's exciting. It's really exciting.
So give me an example of a case that, and maybe not a specific, you know, victim or anything, but just a case where you had, you know, a scenario like this, where had you had the technology that you have now in your lab, you could have solved it, where back then you couldn't.
Tons of them. I think probably the biggest example of would be a ligature. Ligature used to strangle an individual. I can think of probably 4 or 5 different examples of this in cases that I've worked in the recent past, and even have a few of those in the lab right now. You're going to have for sure the victim. You're going to have possibly the suspect as you yank back on that ligature, but these are typically also going to be common household items that they're using, like rope, or so you've got this like background, if you will, DNA that sort of builds up on these things, and that's something that's detectable. So in the magical case, you've got two people in that mixed sample. You've got the suspect and the victim, and you're good to go. You can usually get a conclusive profile in that. But in a lot of cases, you might have some family members or some just residual. This rope has been in this suspect's house for years and years and years, and everybody family wise or friend wise have put a little bit of DNA on that. We're picking that up, and that's causing us to really have a problem discerning what's important and what's not important on that. To actually be able to put a little bit of a bigger microscope on that profile and see all of the parts and pieces of the DNA that are making up that mixture, it makes confusion gives it a lot more clarity, and we're able to interpret that. There's a lot of this casework out there, a lot.
And the amazing thing is, you know, you're on the scientific end and on the processing end, but, you know, with every case, there's always victims, there's always families of the victims, even the suspects and the suspect's family. You know, everybody's involved, and there's resources going to, you know, the police, the investigators, the cold case investigators. You know, if they have to dredge this case up multiple times, you know, that costs money. It's amazing how intricate this process is and how widespread. It's like when you throw a boulder into a pond, you know, you don't just get one splash, you get lots and lots of ripples, and that affects all of society. So clearly, to me, the more technology can catch up, the more we can decipher these things and move cases forward, as opposed to just putting them on the shelf and waiting for technology to come around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. So, well, listen, I know you're busy. You got a ton of other things to get going, especially with, you know, taking this new lab up to up to par. And so, hey, so where could we reach you? Where, if somebody had a case and they needed help, how could they reach you?
Best thing to go is to go to our website, intermountainforensics.com. As I said, we're pretty transparent there, so we keep updates. We keep you'll know what's going on, and if you want to submit something, there's an online portal that we can set up for you. If you want to see our pricing, we've got to keep the lights on. It's all there and very visible. We also have a Facebook page and a Twitter account and LinkedIn, and you can find us pretty easy just by searching Intermountain Forensics. And in the end, if you really need me, just my name, Danny at intermountainforensics.com, and I'll help you out.
Awesome. Well, hey, we appreciate you coming on. I know there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff in the future, so we'll have you on future episodes. And yeah, it's exciting, man. I appreciate it. And I love all the stuff that you guys are doing in there. And so keep up the great work.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's exciting times. I think we're going to make some really big breakthroughs over the next few years.
Awesome. Hey, have a great day.
You too. Thanks so much.
Okay, we'll see you.